This is the third video tutorial in our introduction to Photoshop. We're going to be building on some of the tools that we've already learned and adding to our skill set. So first of all, we're going to be using two images. We're going to need the leftmost image and the rightmost image. So go and download those. Remember that when you click it, it's going to open up in Google Drive. And in the top left corner, you're going to see a link to download the image. Download that to your desktop or to your downloads folder, and be sure to move it from its downloaded location to your saved folder or to your named folder in the 05 Photoshop folder. All right, let's take a look here. So here are the two images you're downloading. Okay, we'll be using this primarily, the one on the left, and we're going to be adding some elements from the one on the right. For now, we can consolidate these into tabs because we're going to start with this file. So let's bring back my workspace. I'm going to have everybody, as usual, we're going to reset our workspace. So reset essentials, and that puts our tools back to normal. We're also going to reset our tools by going whatever tool is active. I'm going to go to the gear for that tool, and I'm going to reset all tools. Okay, and you can do that with any of the tools that are open. I've been noticing sometimes it doesn't work for all tools. So if your tools are acting weird, just go and reset the specific tool that you're working on, reset tool, and that will solve any weird setting problems from either previous users or previous sessions. All right, so first of all, we're going to duplicate our layer. There are a couple ways to do that. I can right click and duplicate the layer, or I can just drag the layer down, add it to the plus here, it'll duplicate a layer, or I can hit Command J on my keyboard, it'll duplicate my layer in that way as well. We're going to rename this layer and we're going to type blur. We're going to add, so this is essentially the two layers are identical and one is exactly in the same position as the other. We're going to add a blur by going to filter, and we're going to go down to blur, and we're going to go to Gaussian blur. By default, your number will probably be 1.0 like this. It's a slight blur. We're going to add that by either cranking the number up or typing in 15.0, and you can turn on the preview to see that blur in context. Once we're happy with that, we're going to hit OK. What we're going to be trying to do here is leaving the farthest point of this image blurry, and the closest part, which is here, this kind of closer part of the wires, a little bit less blurry. To do that, we're going to be creating a mask. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and then I'm going to explain what's happening. So first of all, we're going to click on the mask layer over here, and it's going to add a white box right there. And in that white box, we're going to add a black to white gradient. Reset my colors, go to my classic gradient, and I'm just going to click and drag down here. Too far. I'm going to undo that. And so what you'll notice is if I start at the top and go to the bottom, the blurry part is here at the top, and the clear part is in the back. I want the opposite of that, so I'm going to undo, and with a white to black, and you can actually just change this if you wanted to by going white to black, and then you can reverse it to black to white. So there's a reverse key right here, or a reverse checkbox, I should say. So if I reverse it, it goes black to white, and I do the same thing. This time it's going to go blurry in the back and clear in the front. So let's take a look at what that's doing before we continue. So if you look here, when we clicked on this little button here, it said, which is called mask, layer mask, it created a white box, and that is the mask that we're talking about. But let me explain what's happening with this image. I'm gonna right click this and disable, actually I'm gonna delete the layer mask so that that's gone. And let's explain exactly what's happening. So let's say that I have an image, and I'm gonna go over to here to show you an image of a little girl and a dog. And we put it in a frame with a matte cutout, so it shows only the heart part of the image. You can assume that the rest of this image is sort of behind this white matting, and it's not actually been cut out. It's only showing me the part that is showing through the heart. So let's go back over to Photoshop, and I'm going to show you what's happening here. I'm going to draw a selection using, I'll use the lasso tool, and it's going to be a heart-shaped selection. I'm actually going to move down here just so we can see, maybe I'll do it here, so we can see what's happening when I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a mask. I could do that by clicking here. Okay, and I'll show you that I can click on this and it's going to create a layer mask. I'm going to show you another way to do it by going layer, layer mask, and I have some control over here. So there are 5 options here. The one that happens when I click on this, when I went down to the bottom of my layer mask and I clicked on layer mask, is it going to reveal selection. That's this one. Okay, and what's going to happen is I'll click on this, and what happens is you can see now that there is a blurry part where that heart is, and in my layer palette, there's a white heart with a black background. I'm going to turn off this black background to show you exactly what's happening. So there's that blurry image that I had, and what's showing through this white heart with the black background is that blurry bit that's here. So what we're seeing essentially is the cutout showing the image in the background. So here's the cutout, and here's the image in the background. So we're looking, and I'm going to make this a little bigger to make it easier to see. Panel options, large. Okay, so here's our image in the background, and here's our heart. I'm going to disconnect these two so that you can see that when I click on the image and I go to my move tool, I'm going to move the image in the background. And what's happening is just this image back here is moving around the back. And that would be the equivalent of taking the picture of the dog and the girl and moving that around. The cutout stays the same, and I'm moving the photo around in the background. So that's this situation here. I can also click on the mask, and then the photo will stay in the same position. But when I move the mask around, that photo is in the background, and I'm just moving the cutout. That would be the equivalent of moving this white mask around, and the photo that's in the background stays in the same position. Okay, so that's what's happening here. So this is actually not what I want. So I'm going to put my image back to where it was, which is here. I'm going to delete this layer mask. Okay, so now we're back to two versions of this. We have our original image and our blurry image, okay, which is in the exact same spot. For now, I'm going to turn off my background image to make it really clear what's happening. I'm going to add this mask again. Okay, this is going to do the same thing that this does up here, layer mask, reveal selection. So I'm actually, no, it's going to, layer mask is going to reveal all. Okay, and because I don't have a selection, when I did it with the heart, it left with the heart shape that I drew, it left the selection. But right now I don't have a selection, so it's just going to reveal everything. So I'm going to click on this, I'm going to click here, and so it creates, if you remember, the white heart was what was showing through. In this case, this whole thing is showing through. So if I click here, I'm going to deselect these. This is going to be a little confusing, so kind of pay attention to what I'm saying here. I'm going to move this white mask. Now the mask, if you remember, was the equivalent of the heart. So when I go to move this, what you'll notice is it slowly reveals. If I go here and move, not working. Hold on, let me flip this to black to make it a little more obvious. Okay, so if I flipped it to black, which hides everything on this layer. Okay, if I move this mask, what you're seeing is this image showing in behind the mask. Okay, and so basically that mask, which was the cutout of the heart, is kind of moving so I can see what's behind it, which is this. Okay, it's confusing. It'll make a little more sense as we do this. So let me delete this layer mask. Okay, so here's our image. I want to have a gradient. So I'm going to go to my gradient tool, and that gradient is going to be black to white. Okay, so yeah, black to white. So I'm going to make it black to white. I'm going to turn off this. So it's going from black to white, which is done from here. Okay, it's going to be a linear gradient, and it's going to go from the background, which is going to be blurry, to the foreground, which is going to be clear. So I'm going to click and drag, and what that's going to do is it's going to create black to white. Oops, I should have done that as a mask. I'm going to click here, and then I want to add that mask first, and then I'm going to add that gradient, black to white. And so now what happens is you'll see that it is hiding part of the image and showing another part of the image. So the part that's hidden is that kind of the trees in the background there, and the part that's showing is the blurry part. If I flip this, I'm going to reverse this by changing it from white to black. So this time I'm going to drag this way, top down, and what's going to happen is now it's showing, see the white part is showing the bottom part of the image and hiding the top part of the image. Okay, so remember that this is the blurry one. It's showing the bottom half of the blurry one. I'm going to turn this off and turn this on. This is our original image. So we have an image here that's sharp, and in front of it we have part of an image that's blurry. When I turn this back on, I'm going to be able to see through the part that's hidden, which is going to be sharp. The part that's in front is blurry, but I'm only seeing the part that's being shown by the mask. So there's three elements here. Our sharp, let me turn that off. Our sharp image back here, which is our original bird on the wire. Our second image, which is the blurry version, and a mask that's hiding part of it and showing another part. And by putting them all together, it blurs out the background and sharpens up the foreground because this is just laid out in front of the original image. Okay. And so that's kind of what we're going for. I can modify this by changing the gradient by clicking. Remember, I don't want to click on the image or I'm going to add a gradient there. I want to click on the mask, which shows or hides. And I can change this by changing how that gradient works. If I make a small gradient like this, you'll see that it's going to blur what's white and show what's black. If I drag that to be a longer gradient, it kind of blurs over the course of that space there, okay? The longer this is, the longer that gradient changes. So I'm going to click here. This is kind of what I want right there. This in focus, that out of focus. All right, so there's the first part, which granted is confusing, but hopefully you understand. Okay, let's go over to this image here. We're going to cut out this. We've done this before. I have in the past used the polygonal lasso. This time I'll just use the lasso tool. And I'm just going to click and drag a selection around this bird. And I'm going to copy, edit, copy, head over here, edit, paste. And that's going to drop our bird into this layer. We're going to cut this out of the background. We're essentially creating another mask just like what we had here, except instead of being a heart shape, I want exactly this bird shape. So I'm going to go to my object selection tool. I'm going to click on select subject. The computer is going to figure out where the subject is, which is the bird, and it's going to create a selection of that bird. When I click on the mask here, it's going to create a mask similar to what we have over here. This is a gradient mask. This is going to be a mask that, as you notice now, is going to be a bird shape. Instead of a heart shape, it's a bird shape, and that bird is just showing through the shape of my heart. So if I go back to this, if I had, instead of a heart here, if I had cut out my white matting exactly following this girl's hair and her shoulder and her, like, whatever, her body, following up along this dog and cutting that out, then what I would have is the picture of this girl and the dog cut out from the green tree background. That's what I see here. I have the cutout of the bird exactly along its feathers, and what shows through is what's in the background. If I deselect these and I go to my move tool, you'll see that when I move the background, all of that is still back there. I'm just moving the image of the girl and the dog behind that white cutout. Okay, I can do the same thing by clicking on the mask, and I'm moving now the cutout in front of the picture of the girl and the dog. Hopefully all that makes sense. I'm going to link these back together, and for now I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go and grab another image from here. Again, I'm going to deselect and cut out this bird. Edit, copy, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to edit, paste, and edit. Didn't work. Copy. Okay, I'm gonna come over here. I need to make a new layer. I can't paste into a blank layer, so create a new layer. I'm gonna paste in our bird, and let's name these layers. So this is gonna be called flying. This is gonna be called landing. And we are gonna turn this into a similar thing where we cut out our background. So I'm gonna go to object selection, select subject. It's gonna cut out my bird. And I'm gonna remove, I'm gonna mask out the bird. Okay, and we're pretty happy with that. Move tool, and we're going to position this guy kind of in front so it looks like he's closer. Because he's in kind of sharp focus, that blur in the background makes it look like he's closer than the objects in the background. All right, I'm going to turn off my auto select and my show transform controls. I find them really annoying, so I've got them off. Feel free to use this if you like it. It just will give you the option to click on something, and when I have these turned on, I get these transform controls, okay, but I don't want them, so I'm going to turn that off. Okay, I'm happy with that so far. I'm going to bring back my second bird, which is my landing bird, and I'm going to put this guy up here. I want to now apply this change. So right now, this is the mask, and it's showing through what's in the background. I want to change it so that I no longer have a mask, and this is just cut out from that gray background. So I'm going to right-click on the mask, and I'm going to say apply layer mask. That's going to basically use the cutout that we have here and kind of stamp out what's left. So when I do that, you'll see the mask goes away and now this image is cut out from the background. The gray is missing. I'm going to undo so you can see it better. Command Z, Command Shift Z, undo and redo, and you can see it's just cutting out the gray disappears from that image. Okay, and so now our bird has no gray background, it has no mask, it's just a literal cutout of that bird. Okay, all right, I'm going to turn these off just to make it really clear to see what you're seeing. There's our bird, there's no other gray around that anymore. Okay, let's bring this back, bring this back, bring this back. All right, we want to put this bird up here, and we're just going to bring it down inside. So I'm going to go Edit, Transform, and I'm going to scale this down a little bit to about there, and I'm going to hit the little check mark, and I'm going to stick it up here. All right, I'm going to flip it so that it is looks like it's sort of landing on these wires. So I'm going to go Edit, Transform, and I'm going to go Flip Horizontal. Okay, so it flips it in the horizontal plane. So now it's facing the other way. Okay, and that just basically, flipped it from one way to the other. Okay, all it's doing is flipping. And I'm going to put it close to these wires here. Now, this should be further back than this bird, so we're going to blur this as well. We're going to just learn another type of blur by going Filter. We're going to go down to Blur, and we're going to go to Radial Blur. Radial blur will give you, there's like an amount slider here, and basically what's happening, I'll go like a lot here and you'll see what's happening. I'll hit OK, and you can see it kind of creates this radial blur as if it's moving along where we had that radius. There was a circle. Okay, I'm gonna undo that. That's too much. I just wanted you to see how it works. Filter, blur, radial blur, and I'm gonna crank that back down. That doesn't need to be so wild. So I'm gonna go, let's go 20. That might be okay. I hit OK. And there we have a little bit of a blur here. I'm going to put this back over here and actually let me undo. We're going to undo two steps. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to duplicate this layer. So Command J or drag down to the plus. We're going to keep both copies, but we're going to have landing and we're going to have landing blur. Okay, I'm going to switch these so landing is in front, and for now we'll turn this off. Let's add that radial blur here by going again filter, and we're going to go blur, and we're going to go radial blur, and 20 is fine, so we'll hit OK there. Okay, there's our blur, and then I'm going to turn this guy back on, and I'm going to add a slight Gaussian blur to this. So we're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. It doesn't have to be as heavy, so we'll maybe bring this down to say 10. Okay, and we're going to say OK, and then we're just going to offset this a little bit to make it look like it's moving, and we're going to turn the landing blur down to, let's say, 60%. Okay, and that kind of creates a little bit of a motion blur as if it were moving a little bit, and the camera, when the photo was taken, was, created a little bit of motion in our image. Okay, so we're pretty happy with that. Those are the elements that we wanted to include into our image. The last thing we're going to do here is we're going to click on background, and we're going to, I'm not sure if this will work with the two here. We'll see how it goes. I want to replace this gray sky. So I'm going to click on the background layer, and I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go down to Sky Replacement. Now, this is an AI filter within Photoshop. So I'm going to go Sky Replacement. It's going to give me some options. Okay, there is a drop down here where you can select a number of different options, and it'll replace your sky with a number of kind of prefabricated sky options. We're going to go down and choose this guy here. Okay, and we're going to say OK to that. Okay, and so what happens is it puts this sky in here. Now notice that this sky is behind this one here. So the problem with this is that the gray that we had here is interfering with what's happening here. So we need to make it so that this image no longer interferes with what's happening in the background in our sky replacement layer, which is back here. To do that, we're going to click on our blur layer, and we'll notice here that it says normal. This is the type of layer. So we're going to change the layer from normal down to multiply. And what happens with that is it basically knocks out any white. So notice that our normal has like this kind of grayish color. By going multiply, it pulls out all of the white pixels and removes them. And there you'll see that there's a bunch of these. They all do different things. Basically they change the way two layers interact. So this layer and the layers behind it are going to interact differently based on the layer type, And it's really difficult sometimes to predict how they're going to work. Some of them, it basically depends on what the pixels are on this layer and what the pixels are behind it. So like sometimes it's a little tricky to work with, but for now, what we want to do is click this multiply. That multiplies this layer out so that we end up losing all those white pixels, and this looks pretty good now. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to try and match these colors. So when we added in our sky replacement, the colors of this thing look a little kind of, it's evening, so kind of looks purpley and reddish. So we're going to do a little bit of kind of editing and try and get that to match the rest of the scene. So let's we'll start with the closest bird, which is our flying bird. We're going to click on our flying layer. And notice that if I am clicking on these two elements, this is the image, this is the mask. I want to be on the image because I want to change the color of the image. I don't want to change the color of the mask. The mask stays the same. So just make sure that this white box is around my image. What I want to do now is I want to adjust the colors of this bird. So I'm going to show you two ways to do it. One is better than the other. We'll start with the, in quotes, wrong way to do it. So I'm going to go image, I'm going to go adjustments, and then I'm going to go, there's a few options here, and there's a few different ways to do this based on what we're doing. We will try a couple. Some will work better than others, but let's for now start with, let's try a little photo filter. We'll try photo filter. Yeah. And what's going to happen here is it's going to, let me turn it on and off so you can see preview. It's very subtle, but it's basically slightly warming this image. Okay, and that's not exactly what we want. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try and have it so that we are kind of turning it a little more purpley, okay, which is cooler. Let's click on color here, and instead of this orange, we're going to use the eyedropper, okay, and we're going to try and pick up one of the purples, maybe up here in the sky, and see if we can't pick that. Oh, it's not, I don't think it's picking it up. No, it's not. So we're going to manually crank this over to a purple and see what happens if I get like kind of a darkish purpley blue color, something like that, and I hit OK. And then you can see, again, it's pretty subtle. Let's crank this up a little bit. Not really doing much. Not giving me the colors that I want. Let's try something else. I'm going to cancel that. Let's go to image adjustments. So instead of doing a photo filter, we'll try hue saturation, see how that does. And again, there's a couple of these that will work better than others, but let's try hue saturation for now. Okay, and so what's going to happen with this is we're going to get some controls over the saturation and the colors. So I'm going to crank this just so you can see what happens. I'm going to colorize. And when I drag this, you can see, depending on where I drag this here, it's going to apply this to the colors in here. So this is really, really purple here. And so I can turn my saturation up or down. I probably want to be a little bit more subtle, and that's probably not quite right. I probably want it to be somewhere in almost like a purpley orange, kind of like this. There's a little orange in that, so it's picking those colors up. So you're gonna play with these numbers here until you get something that looks a bit more realistic than black and white. And when you're happy with it, you're gonna click OK. So that looks okay. That did a half decent job there. And let me just hit undo to see the difference. There's gray and white or black and white, and there's our purple. So that matches a little bit better. Okay, and that was using the hue saturation. We'll do the same thing with this landing bird here, and we'll do a different filter just so you can see a better way of doing this. When I made that change, I went image, adjust, and I picked something from here. When I make that change, it changes my original. So you can see here, if I turn this off for a second, you can see that all of this has turned slightly purple. Okay, it changed my original image, which means if I want to make changes and make it black and white again, I can't because I've sort of applied it to the image. What we're going to do here is apply something called an adjustment layer, which almost does the same thing. You'll see down at the bottom when I click over here on this little half white, half black circle, I get a list of items, and this list of items are the same list that we had up here under image adjustments. Okay, we have the same list right here. The difference being it's going to be an adjustment layer. An adjustment layer gets put in front of the layer we're talking about. So it's almost like looking through like a clear colored filter maybe. Okay, so say I had like a piece of like red plastic or even sunglasses, looking through them changes the way everything looks. That's what this is going to do. So let's try doing this with, we already tried photo filter, didn't work that well. We did hue saturation. Let's try another one. We'll try channel mixer just to see how this works. Now, when I clicked it, last time we got a pop-up window over here. This time when I click it, it does two things. It added a new layer and it created this set of properties here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to show you what's happening, I'm going to drag this and you can see it's changing everything because it's, like I said, looking through sunglasses. And so it's changing everything below this layer. Okay. What I want to do is I actually only want to change the layer right below it, which is this landing layer. To do that, I have to set this little box here, click that and say only adjust the layer right below, which means when I click it, you'll notice, let me crank it so you can see what's happening. And I change it to blue. And when I click this, it's going to have applied that only to the layer below it, which was this bird here. Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to go back up here. Now that's not actually the color I want. So I'm going to go back up to here and go to these layers and we're going to kind of mess around with these until we can get to a point that we like them. Why is that not? This should be adjusting my colors on this bird, but it's not, and I'm not sure why. I'm going to delete this. So here's the nice thing about this. If I do make these changes, because it didn't apply it to the image, I can just delete this and start over again. Okay, so again, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to my, what did we do? We did color balance. I'm going to go to color balance, and then I'm going to make some changes here. Maybe I want it to be kind of reddish. I'm going to apply it to this guy. And then as I make these changes, it's only changing kind of the one that I'm working on here. I'm going to bring this down maybe a little bluer. Okay, now that's pretty, it's maybe a little bit, actually, in fact, I'm going to go a little more than I want to, just to make the point. That's pretty purplish, right? I want to turn that down a little bit. So what I can do is with my color balance, I can turn the opacity of this filter down by clicking on the opacity and bringing this down, and it'll limit the effect of that purple. Okay, so if I crank it up to 100, it's really intense. If I bring it down to 30 or whatever, 25, 30, it's a little bit kind of muted. Okay, and so that's two ways of doing the same thing. The last piece I might do is on this landing blur, this one here we have here. Because we're not applying any color to that, you can sort of see the white here. So I'm going to turn this to a multiply layer, which again will knock out all of the whites. Okay, notice the difference there. I've got white and gray in that. When I come down to multiply, it kind of boots all those whites out of there, and that looks a little bit more realistic. I might even turn this to a multiply as well. No, it's too dark. I'm going to leave it as it is. Okay, and that is kind of our finished piece here. We're going to go File, save this work. Okay, make sure we save it as a PSD. It'll tell you that a JPEG can't be saved without losing information. That's fine because we don't want a JPEG, so we say OK. It's going to give us the Photoshop format, which we want, and we're going to rename this birds dash sky replacement. Okay, sky replacement. Okay, and we're going to save this in our Photoshop folder and hit OK. And the last thing we're going to do is export this for web. So we're going to go export, export as. I changed the physical size of this. We don't need to be so big. We'll make the width 700. Click here in height. It's going to update that for us automatically. Hit export. And it's going to save that in my Photoshop file. You can leave the same name, but remember the PNG is the file that goes on your Wix website. And that's the end of the tutorial. Hopefully that made sense to everyone. And you spend some time working with this. It's a little confusing. These are definitely a little confusing in terms of concept, what they're doing. Spend some time watching the tutorial and practicing with it, and hopefully you'll understand what's happening. Okay, good luck.